Hello, and welcome to our webinar. If you're watching this video, then you're in the right room. Let us know you're here by typing where you're joining us from in the chat box. The chat box is available on the bottom right-hand corner of the room. If you're on mobile, you can click the message icon to bring up the chat. Welcome, everyone. You will see messages from our moderators in the chat box. They are here to help you during the event. From now, I just want to give you a quick introduction to the webinar room to ensure you can get the most out of your webinar experience. You will see the video playing in the bulk of your screen. This will be where presenters will share their slides and camera during the event. You don't need to worry about taking notes, as we will send the slides to you after the event. Next to this is the chat box, where we have all been introducing ourselves. You can get the moderator's attention by typing help. Within the chat box, there is a Q&A tab. Please put your questions into Q&A. It will make it easier for us to find them at the end of the presentation. We will then address questions at the end of the talk. We may answer technical questions that we can help with. Then they will appear in the Answered tab. We will delete the answered questions to make space for other answered Q&As. During some presentations throughout the event, we'll be using polls and other interactive features. These will appear on your screen for you to interact with. If you do not wish to complete them, you can press the X in the top right-hand corner to remove them from your screen. If the webinar has the options for you to use subtitles, then you will see the CC symbol. Click on it, and it will drop down a list of languages available. I think that is enough information for now. So without further ado, let's get the webinar started.
Good morning teachers, and welcome to today's webinar. Let me do a quick tech check. If you can hear me and see me, please type into the chat box to respond to my question. What was your breakfast this morning? What was your breakfast this morning? Me first. I had a Vietnamese bánh mì and iced tea. Perfect combo for today breakfast. How about you? What was your breakfast this morning? Just let us know. Ooh, oh, very nice. We have bún bò, milk noodles. Great. Thank you, teacher. So welcome to the Professional Development Training for Tiếng Anh Friend Plus, co-organized by Oxford University Press and Phương Nam Company. We have chicken noodles. I'm Sophia. I will be the lead moderator for today's section, and it's great to see all of you here today. So this is the second training section for Tiếng Anh Friend Plus, which will be presented by our presenter, Rob Peacock. I know some of you already know Rob, but we always welcome new teachers joining us today. So let me share a little bit about Rob for you. Rob currently works at Oxford University Press as an educational services consultant. He has spent over 20 years in Japan teaching students of all ages, as well as providing teacher support and workshops. I'm going to hand over to Rob for the training session today.
Thank you very much, Sophia. And good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Rob, and I work for Oxford University Press in the Tokyo office in Japan. I'm joining you from just outside Tokyo in my home in Chiba Prefecture, where we're having a cloudy and rainy morning today. Okay, just to check that everybody can hear me, can you please warm up the chat box and type into the chat which city you're joining us from today? And how is the weather in your city? So again, I'm joining you from Chiba Prefecture. It's rainy and cloudy. How about you? Where are you? And how is the weather today? Okay, so we have somebody in Ho Chi Minh City where it's sunny today. Okay, lots of people in Ho Chi Minh. Sunny and hot in Ho Chi Minh City today. Great. Is anybody not joining us from Ho Chi Minh today? Okay, Teacher Do, it's sunny today. Okay, we have a teacher from Lam Dong today where it's very windy. Okay. And again, sunny and hot in Ho Chi Minh. Great. It has been sunny and hot here in Japan for the last few weeks, but we have a typhoon coming up from the south that's brought in a little more cloudy and rainy weather, unfortunately. But we'll have the sun back soon, I'm sure. Okay, so in today's webinar, we're going to be talking about how to get secondary students, young teenagers to communicate in English by looking at some real-world communication activities with authentic language. So there'll be a mixture of practical classroom activities and teaching theory today, and I hope there'll be some useful material for everybody. Here's the schedule for today. We're going to start up by talking about why communication skills are so important in a modern global society, and then discuss some of the challenges that we face getting young teenagers to speak in the English classroom. We'll also look at some solutions to address those challenges. I'll then go on to illustrate those solutions with several activities that come from Friends Plus Level 7. And we'll have a chance to try those out throughout the group and look at some important areas such as how those activities are introduced and explained to the students, how we can set clear goals in those activities, and what to do if students make mistakes, etc. We'll then finish off by looking at some useful resources, and I'll try to leave about 10 minutes for questions. As we go through the activities and we have some quick discussions, I will be inviting you to type your ideas into the chat box. So please be prepared to share your experiences and opinions about teaching. And we'll also have a couple of chances for polls as we go. So I look forward to an interactive, communicative workshop this morning. Also, before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit more about myself. As I mentioned, I live and work just outside of Tokyo in Japan now. I'm from the UK originally, but I moved to Japan in the year 2000. So I've been here nearly 25 years now. I spent 10 years in Japan teaching students of a variety of ages and levels. And then I started working for Oxford University Press Japan in the year 2010. And my job is mainly to visit schools, using lots of materials, or provides webinars such as today's to introduce teaching ideas and make sure everybody can get the most out of using OUP. I have had the chance to visit Vietnam once. I went to Ho Chi Minh City in the year 2012 and provided some workshops on listening skills for teachers there. It was a really great experience and the food was very, very nice. Also, as a teacher, I spent 10 years teaching a variety of students, and there were many teenagers in my classes as well. My classes were particularly focused on communication skills. Many of my students had extra classes with Japanese teachers of English, where they learnt grammar and reading skills and were prepared for particular exams. So I had the pleasure of trying to get Japanese teenagers to speak confidently in English, which was very fun, very rewarding, and very challenging. So let's start by talking about the importance of communication skills. Many people in education these days are talking about teaching students the skills they need to be empowered 21st century citizens. Communication is one of many skills that students need today to be successful in a modern global society. Oxford University Press has published a paper on the importance of global skills, and I'll show you the link for this later so that you can download it for free. Within the paper, the experts who wrote it identified 5 groups of important skills. So in addition to communication, we also have collaboration, creativity and critical thinking, emotional self-regulation and well-being, digital literacies, and global citizenship. Now, I don't have time to talk about all of these today, but you'll see in the activities some of them support a variety of these skills. But I'd really like to focus on the communication and collaboration aspect today. So let's start off with a quick discussion. Please complete this sentence. What do you think students with good communication skills can do? Again, please type your ideas into the chat box. Students with good communication skills can express their favorite sports. Students with good communication skills can listen to their partner as well as speaking. What ideas do you have? What's true in your teaching situation? Please type your ideas in English into the chat box. Any ideas? What do you think is important for good communication with your students? Okay, have we got any ideas coming through yet? I can see some of you are letting us know which school you're with. Please be aware that that will come up when you pre-register for this webinar. But what do you think students with good communication skills can do? What are some ideas that are true? Okay, express their opinions and thoughts. Communicate confidently with others. Thank you very much. Okay, and teacher Thana, better their learning and social skills. They're very important as well. I'm going to mention those in a moment as well. Express what they think confidently. Thank you very much. Talk in English daily, understand English cartoons and English songs. Great ideas. Thank you very much, Tran. Make friends easily. Speak and integrate confidently as well as express their ideas. Great ideas. Be confident and have some content to talk about. Thank you very much. Know their vocabulary and be confident. So great ideas there. Thank you very much to those of you who have shared. Sorry, I don't have time to read out everybody's ideas. We're getting a lot of ideas coming through the chat box now. But I'd like to share some ideas that come from the Common European Framework of Reference. And these touch on a lot of the topics that many of you have mentioned. These are from the descriptors at A1, A2, and a little at B1 levels. So from the lower to intermediate stages, students with good communication skills can ask and answer questions about personal details, such as where they live, people they know, and things that they have. And also discuss topics of personal interests or pertinent to everyday life. So everyday topics, which I think some of you mentioned, such as their family, their hobbies, work or study, in the case of our students, travel and current events. And then finally, a little higher is to give reasons and explanations for opinions. So touching on some of the topics that you all mentioned, but I think being confident was a very common theme in your comments as well. Another important area to think about is the difference between spoken interaction and spoken production. So these are two areas of communication. Spoken interaction is, of course, speaking with a partner or in a small group, sharing ideas, asking and answering questions, whereas spoken production involves standing up in front of a group of people and expressing ideas. It could be a presentation, it could be taking part in a debate, it could be making an announcement or giving a speech in English. There are many different scenarios in which students will need to talk in front of other people. So what are the different skills that are involved in spoken interaction and spoken production? Some of you mentioned being confident, having social skills, etc. So I think these apply to different situations. For spoken interaction, I think it's useful to listen to your partner and respond appropriately. As some of you mentioned, listening to your partner is important. And being able to use the language spontaneously, so students aren't using a script when they speak with a partner, for example. And social skills, which again, some of you mentioned, are also very important. Keeping the conversation going by asking your partner questions. So for example, if you were to ask me, what's your favorite music? I would say, well, I like jazz music, but also, how about you? What kind of music do you listen to keep the conversation going? Also, we have spoken production. So skills there involve speaking to an audience for a period of time. When you're chatting with a partner or in a group, you might just say 1 or 2 sentences. But when you're giving, for example, a presentation, you'll need to speak for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or for me today, 90 minutes in front of an audience. And that can be very challenging for students. They need to practice that. Also, we might be delivering a prepared speech, but not always memorized. The reason I mention that is that many teachers like to do speech practice or enter their students in speech competitions, or do recitation with their students where they memorize a script. But presentation practice is also very important. In that case, students don't memorize a script. They might be working from notes to deliver a message. So it's useful to have that kind of practice as well. And also, projecting your voice is very important. I hope you can also all hear my voice well today. I'm speaking in front of my computer, so you can adjust the audio. But if we were in a conference room or in a school and I was talking to you, I would need to speak more loudly to make sure everybody can hear. And of course, students need to practice that. Many of you mentioned confidence, and students need to be confident to speak loudly in front of a group. There's also an appropriate use of body language, for example, using gestures when you're giving a presentation. That can be useful a little, but we shouldn't wave our hands around too much because it can be distracting. Okay, so there are many areas of communication that we need to think about when we're teaching spoken interaction or spoken production. The Common European Framework of Reference talks about both, the skills involved for both. And nowadays, many ministries of education and other curriculum designers also talk about the importance of practicing both spoken interaction and spoken production with our students. And we'll look at activities for both today. So those are the importance of communication skills and some important areas to focus on while developing our students' communicative competence. But let's look at some challenges and solutions. As a teacher, I found it very challenging getting young teenagers to speak. I'm sure all of you face similar challenges in your classes. So let's look at some common reasons that students don't speak in the classroom. However, I've taken a key word out of each sentence, so please take some time to read these and the options: vocabulary, think, laugh, laughed, understanding and engaged, and then type into the chat box which word should go into each sentence. So I've numbered the sentences, the challenges, and I've given each word a letter. So you can simply type 1B or 2C, 3D, etc. So when you're ready, please type your answers into the chat box. Which words do you think should go into which sentence? Again, you don't have to type the whole sentence, just 2A or 2C, etc. 5B, for example. Which do you think are the correct answers? Do you think it's 1A or 1D? Okay, here are some answers. Great, thank you very much. So 1C, 2A. Okay, and we have all of the answers here. 1C, 2A, 3E, 4D, 5B. And some similar answers. 1C, 2A, 3A, 4D, 5B. Okay, I think everybody is giving some very similar answers. Does anybody think anything different? Okay, more answers coming in. 1 is laughed at, 2 vocabulary, 3A, 4D, 5B, etc. Okay, and again, CAE, DB. Okay, I think everybody is giving some very similar answers. So apologies to those of you who haven't entered your answers yet, but let's look at these together. Okay, so here are the reasons that students don't speak. There's fear of mistakes and being laughed at. Teenagers are very sensitive and they really care what their friends and the other students think of them. So if they're laughed at in class, they'll feel very embarrassed. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. There's also not having enough vocabulary or phrases to express themselves, not having anything to say or not being engaged in the lesson. Students really need a reason to talk, as well as engaging in relevant topics. There's not understanding what they have to do, and many students will not tell you if they don't understand because of number 1, fear of being laughed at. And then not having enough time to think or get ready to speak. If we just say to our students, okay, ready, go, speak in English, sometimes they won't because they need a little time to prepare. So which of these reasons are true in your classes? So Sophia, if you're ready with the first poll, I'd like to ask everybody to choose the option or options which are true for you. So if we could have the first poll on the screen, please. You will be able to choose the option or options which are true for you. What are the reasons that students don't speak in your classes? Okay, so you should be able to choose multiple options in this poll. And we will see the results in a moment. If you have some extra reasons why students don't speak, please feel free to type those into the chat box. Okay, so the poll should be coming up on the screen soon. Here we go. Okay, and many of you have already chosen the answers. Great. So again, please be aware that you can choose one of these, 2 of these, 4, or all 5 of these options, depending on what's true for your classes. Okay. So the most common answer so far is number 2, not having enough vocabulary. But fear of mistakes is also very popular at 24%. 20% not having anything to say. 11% not understanding what they have to do. And 17% of you have chosen not having enough time to think and get ready to speak. Again, feel free to type extra ideas into the chat box if there's anything I haven't included here. But I'll just leave a little time to see if any extra answers come in. Please excuse me while I just take a sip of the barley tea which I'm drinking. Okay, and I think we're ready to publish the results. So Sophia, would you mind publishing so we can see which are the most common answers? Which of these did we see? Okay, so here we go. The most common answer is not having enough vocabulary or phrases to express themselves, followed by fear of making mistakes. Third place is not having anything to say or not being engaged in the lesson. Fourth most popular is not having enough time, and the least popular, not understanding what they have to do. So thank you very much for your feedback there. That's very interesting to see which of these are the most common. It seemed very even, so I imagine that most of these are very common problems for your classes. So now let's look at some solutions. Here are some teacher actions which encourage speaking. We have setting specific goals, giving clear instructions, providing the words and phrases they need, allowing students time to prepare and practice, and thinking about when, how, and when to correct mistakes. But which of these actions solve the problems that we just discussed? So let's bring the problems back. Once again, please type into the chat box, which do you think is the solution for problem 1? Again, you can type 1A or 1E, 1B, etc. Which do you think solves problem 1? Okay, please type into the chat box. What should we do if students are afraid of making mistakes or being laughed at with their students? Please type into the chat. Which solution is for number 1 here? Okay, here are some answers. So 1E, thank you very much, teacher. Fear of being mistakes and being laughed at. We should think about how and when to correct mistakes. Okay, great. So there are times when we would need to correct students, but sometimes to make sure that they feel they don't feel embarrassed and to build their confidence, sometimes it's okay to let some mistakes go. And we'll talk a bit later about what to do with the mistakes depending on the activity. Okay, some of you have typed in all of the answers, so let's look at them together. 2, not having enough vocabulary or phrases to express themselves. You have all chosen C there, and that is correct. We should provide the words and phrases they need to communicate. So sentence stems are very important here. For example, if we're practicing present perfect for experiences, we can give sentence stems such as I have, haven't, seen, ... or I have been to ... etc. And also put up a list of vocabulary items for students to choose and fill the gaps. So with those options, students can simply choose the sentences that are correct for them, and they can be more confident communicating. Number 3, many of you have chosen A. If students are don't have anything to say or they're not engaged in the lesson, we should set specific goals. Yes, that is the answer that I had here. Some of you have chosen E for that. That can be useful as well. But the answer that I had in mind, for 3E, is A. We should set specific goals. So it's useful to think of it like a game of tennis. If you simply say to your students, you can hit the ball anywhere in the tennis court, it doesn't matter, then it's not such an interesting game, is it? But if you have a tennis court and students have to hit the ball within the lines, then there's a challenge, there's a reason to play the game. And a communication activity, I think, is very similar. Students should have a limit or a specific area in which they need to hit the ball. And that makes it challenging and engaging for them. In addition, interesting and engaging topics for teenage learners can be very useful. Now, number 4, many of you have chosen answer B, and that is indeed the answer that I was thinking of. If students don't understand what they have to do, we should give clear instructions, or actually we should give clear instructions at the beginning to make sure all students understand what they have to do. It's also useful to demonstrate with, if you're team teaching, the other teacher, or with a stronger student. Then finally, not having enough time to think or getting ready to speak. Many of you chose D, and that is correct. We should allow students time to prepare and practice, perhaps by making some notes in their notebooks to organize their idea before practicing with a partner and then speaking in front of a group or the entire class. So those are my 5 pieces of advice or areas to look at to support and encourage students to speak during activities. I'd now like to go on to some practical activities using Friends Plus. To illustrate these, we'll look at some activities to work with vocabulary, grammar, reading passages, speaking activities, and giving presentations in class. So again, we're looking at level 7 of Friends Plus today. And in Unit 1, the theme is My Time. So it's a very useful unit to prepare students to talk about themselves, their everyday lives, hobbies, likes and dislikes, etc. Many units in Friends Plus start with vocabulary activities in which students have a vocabulary group and then some useful sentence stems to help them personalize the language and talk about their everyday lives. So in this case, students are given a list of places. They're also encouraged to think about the correct prepositions in front of them at school, as opposed to in the countryside. We have prepositions of place. And then we're encouraged to personalize the language by talking about the places we like being, or don't mind being, don't always like being at, and sometimes hate being at or in. So in an ideal class, we could put students in pairs and say, share your ideas. Students would share sentences with their partners. For example, I like being in the countryside, but I sometimes hate being in fast food restaurants, etc. But of course, when we're teaching teenagers, we can't just put them in pairs and expect them to speak to each other confidently and creatively. It's useful to have an activity to structure things and encourage students to speak. So an activity I'd like to recommend here is the class survey. You could prepare this kind of sheet for your students and hand it out in the lesson, or you could simply draw it on the board and have students copy the chart in their notebook. On the left hand, we have some of the places that we saw in the textbook. And then students in the first column are going to write whether they like, don't mind being at these places, love being at these places, hate them, etc. There's then space to write your partner's answers, and then might find a new partner, write their answers, and find another new partner. But how are we going to introduce this activity to the students? What are the instructions this teacher should give? Well, here are some example instructions from this teacher. First, fill in the My Answer column with your own ideas. For example, I love being at school. I'm sure all of your students do as well. You have 3 minutes. It's also always useful to have a time limit when we're asking students to prepare. So here is what our example students wrote. She doesn't mind being at school. She loves being at the shops. She likes being in bed. She doesn't always like being in the car. And she likes being in the park. Next, students are going to share their answers with a partner. But again, before we do that, we need to give them some clear instructions. So let's look at how the teacher will do this. Next, find a partner and take turns sharing your answers. Write your partner's answers in the Partner 1 column. In addition to giving these instructions, it's also useful to demonstrate with a strong student. So the teacher calls up student A. Please help me to demonstrate. I love being at school. How about you? The student answers, I don't mind being at school. Next, they're going to swap. So now it's your turn. Please tell me your answer to the next question. And her answer is, I love being at the shops. How about you? Notice we're practicing the social skill of keeping a conversation going by asking our partner. I love being at the shops too. We have the same answer. So after that demonstration, the students are going to make a pair and share their answers in the same way. So as the students are listening to their partner, they're going to write down their partner's answers. Again, this is very useful to encourage students to listen to their partners. Often if they don't write down their partner's answers, teenagers won't really listen very well, but this encourages them to pay attention. They'll then change partners and write their new partner's answers down in the partner 2 column, change partners again, and continue. Once students have completed the chart, you'll notice that there are some very similar and quite different answers. It can be useful to as an extension activity, ask our students to make a chart to represent the common answers. And I made this example chart using PowerPoint, but students could use a range of different applications from Microsoft or other applications to make these kinds of bar charts. That's very useful for their digital literacies in addition to their communication competence. And then for spoken production as well as spoken interaction, students could present the common results to the class. So as you can see, the most common or the most popular places in our class to be are in bed and at the shops. All students agreed that they love being at these places. And they could talk through the other common answers as well. So as you notice through those activities, I gave some example instructions which the teacher might use to introduce each stage of the activity. Let's look at the importance of providing clear instructions. I hope you would agree that the instructions I showed were short and simple, and therefore easy for the students to understand. An important part of lesson preparation can be to plan your instructions. Actually write out what you're going to say to the students. You don't have to read out a script, but it's useful to do this to plan how you're going to introduce the activity in a concise way. It's useful to support with examples, for example, by asking a student to demonstrate with you. And it says here that you should always give your instructions in English. But I'm interested in this. I know many of you are Vietnamese teachers of English. I know a lot of Japanese teachers of English like to give their instructions in the student's first language because that can be quicker and easier. But how about like you? Let's do another poll. So Sophia, if you wouldn't mind putting up poll 2. How do you give your instructions in your classes? Do you give them all in English, all in Vietnamese, or in a mixture of both? This time, you can only choose one answer. So again, you should be able to see the poll on your screen soon. Here it is. Okay, great. So I'll just leave a little time for more people to add their responses. I can see we've had 34 responses so far. I think we have a few more people than that in the room today. So let's just leave a little more time. Okay, how do you give instructions in your classes? Only 4% of people so far say English only. Okay, we've had 54 responses, so I think we can close the poll now and publish the results. And we can see overwhelmingly the most common answer with 97% is a mixture of English and Vietnamese. Oh, that's just fallen down to 95. Actually, 5% of you give answers in English only. Okay, so that's very interesting. Thank you very much for your answers there. I think it can be useful to give instructions in a mixture of both. If we only use English, not all students will be able to understand. So for inclusivity, to include all students, a little support in Vietnamese can be useful. I think if you use similar phrases or the same phrases every lesson though, eventually the students will get used to those and you can eventually stop using Vietnamese, and that increases the amount of English that students are exposed to in the class. Anyway, those are 4 important points about providing clear instructions, which I wanted to highlight today. So in this activity, class survey, I hope you could see that there was a specific goal. Students write down their partner's answers. That can keep them engaged and motivated. We saw how to give clear instructions. The textbook provided the words and phrases that they needed with the vocabulary and the sentence stems that we saw in there. We allowed students time to prepare and practice by writing down their answers in the chart before speaking to a partner. We didn't talk too much about how to correct mistakes. If students are reading the sentence stems, there shouldn't be too many errors, but we will talk about how and when to correct in the next activity. And this activity is an extension for the grammar page in this unit. Here we're talking about present simple for everyday activities, and there are plenty of activities for things such as correct verb forms, etc. Then at the end of the page, in Friends Plus, you will often find these user activities for you to commute in an ideal class and share your sentences with your partner. And that will be a productive activity. However, for many teenage learners, for all of the reasons we discussed earlier, such as being shy, not understanding instructions, etc., not being motivated, we might need to use an activity to help keep all students engaged. So for this page, I'd like to recommend 2 truths and a lie. In this activity, students make 3 sentences. 2 of them are true. 1 of them is a lie. The partner needs to guess which one is a lie. So here is how the teacher might introduce this activity. I'm going to read 3 sentences. Which one do you think is a lie? Okay. So here are the example sentences. These are actually true and false for me personally as well. They're not true for me actually. That's wrong. So please imagine they are for the teacher. I eat pho for breakfast every day. Number 2, my sister lives in Ho Chi Minh City. Number 3, my friends don't play video games. Now, before we see what the students think, please take the student's role. Which one do you think is a lie? Okay, so thank you very much, teacher. You guessed number 3 is a lie. My friends don't play video games. Does anybody else have a different idea? Or do you think the same? What else do you think is true or a lie? Please write 1, 2, or 3 in the chat box. Which do you think is a lie? Okay, Lan teacher, you think number 1 is a lie? Number 3? Okay, number 3 is a very common answer. There? Okay. Oh, and teacher, you think number 1 is a lie? Okay, number 3? Okay, thank you very much for your ideas. Most of you think number 1 or number 3. That's very interesting. In our example class, the student thinks that number 2 is a lie. So she thought differently to you. Okay, one teacher thinks number 2. Let's see the answer. That's right, it is number 2. In fact, this teacher doesn't have a sister. But this teacher lives in Vietnam, so she does eat pho for breakfast. And she does have friends, but they don't play video games. Okay, so that's the instructions and the demonstration part. Next, the students are going to try it out. Here are the instructions. Please write your own 3 sentences. 1 sentence will be a lie. You have 5 minutes. So again, a time limit to prepare. And once the students have prepared, now make a pair and read your sentences to each other. Try to guess which sentence is a lie. Then students will make their pairs at their desks and read their sentences to each other. Now let's imagine you're monitoring the activity, so you walk around the class and listen to your students' answers. Here's what this student is saying. I studying English every day. My dad speaking Chinese, very good. My friends and me like play video game and watch movie. So she's making a lot of mistakes there. There's a lot of grammatical errors, but I would say that the meaning is understandable. The partner will understand what she wants to say. So here's my question to you. Should the teacher correct these mistakes? As the teacher is speaking to her partner, should you say, please stop a minute. It's I study English every day, not I studying. What do you think? Or should you stay quiet and not interrupt? Please type yes or no into the chat box. Should you correct these mistakes? Yes or no? Okay, so thank you for correcting the answers, but should you correct them during the activity? Okay, a few teachers are typing no, 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 no. No, this is a speaking activity. Thank you very much, Tran teacher. No, 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 no. Okay, everybody is saying no. I agree. We shouldn't correct the mistakes, as Teacher Dan is saying. So, but why shouldn't we correct? Well, let's think about the different types of speaking activity we usually do. There are accuracy-focused speaking activities. These are focused on correct pronunciation, correct grammar, and correct vocabulary. Often students will be repeating after the teacher or reading out a sentence, and we're testing whether they're getting the grammar correct. The purpose is to improve accuracy, and you should correct your students immediately. But that's not the type of activity we're doing with Two Truths and a Lie. We're actually doing a fluency-focused speaking activity. Here, the focus is for students to practice the skill of speaking and to feel comfortable and confident speaking in English. So we don't correct and we do post-correction. So that could mean writing down some of the mistakes that you hear your students making. And then after we've finished Two Truths and a Lie, the speaking activity, you could write up some of the wrong answers, the mistakes that you heard your students made, and ask them to correct them in pairs. So as Teacher Lan says, it depends on the speaking activity. If you're doing an accuracy-focused speaking activity, you should correct them. If it's fluency-focused, you shouldn't correct, and perhaps do some post-correction instead. Okay, so that was Two Truths and a Lie. Again, you can see there's a specific goal built into the activity. Students need to listen and decide which sentence is a lie. We saw how to give clear instructions. I hope that you would agree the instructions I showed the example teacher giving were clear and concise, easy for the students to understand. Perhaps the teacher wrote these out before the class. We provide students with the word and phrases they need by using these sentence stems, which you can see that are provided in the textbook. We allowed students time to prepare and practice by writing out their sentences at the beginning. And then we saw how not to correct mistakes during the activity, but to do post-activity correction. That way we can build our students' confidence and develop their speaking fluency. Moving on, there's another section in the same grammar page, which was designed as a grammar accuracy activity, where students put the verbs in the brackets or the parentheses into the correct tense. Okay, so that was designed essentially for grammar accuracy, grammar practice, but we can do an extension activity from this to develop communication ability. And this is called Dictogloss. It's very useful whenever you have a short text in your coursebook. Here are the instructions. Listen to the passage, write down the most important words, but don't try to write down everything. You will use your notes to tell the story to your partner. So this activity is similar to dictation, but the crucial difference is students only write down the key words, the most important words. They don't write down everything. Okay, let's try and practice this together. So I am going to read out the reading passage that we saw just now. If you have a pencil and paper at home or a pen and paper, please try to do what the students would do, which is to write down the key words. If you don't have pen and paper, maybe you could type it into the chat box or into a Word document. Feel free to share your notes afterwards. Okay, so please be prepared to write down the keywords. If you're ready, I'm going to read the paragraph, the passage. Okay? Please listen and write down the key words. I like my brother, but I think he has a problem. He doesn't sleep much at the weekends because he plays video games all day and watches TV all night. His friends don't see him very often because he stays in his room and he doesn't go outside. He speaks to us on his mobile phone when he's hungry. I don't know if this is normal. Please help. Okay, so that's the passage. If you are writing notes at home, then please feel free to post those into the chat box. It would be interesting to see what you think the key words were. In a real class, you might read the passage 2 or 3 times, but I'm sure that was very, very easy for you. Let's look. Oh, great. So thank you very much, Teacher Tao. You wrote down some interesting keywords: brother, problem, not much, not sleep much, video games, TV, friends not often, not outside, mobile phones and help. Okay. And Lan Teacher and An Teacher wrote down some very similar words and phrases there. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And so did Tan Teacher. Okay. So thank you very much for taking the student's role and sharing your ideas. Here's what my example student wrote down. You can see some very similar words and phrases to those that you wrote down. But the challenge is using these phrases to then recreate the text. You're going to tell your partner what the story was or what the problem was using your notes. Okay. How might that look when the students do it? Well, here is my example student. She says, I like brother, but he has problem. He doesn't sleep because play video games all day and watch TV all night. He hasn't friends because he always stay in room and he never go outside. He speaks with mobile phone because he is hungry. He isn't normal. Help! Okay. So you can see this is a little different to the original text. Of course, the teacher is making some grammar errors, but I think she is conveying the meaning very well. We can understand what the passage is about. So in a real class, the students might talk to a partner to practice recreating the text, and then practice again in front of a group or in front of the class. Then to correct their errors for post-correction, the student might look at the original text in the course book. Of course, throughout all of these stages, we ask our students to close their books so they can't see. Okay, so that's Dictogloss. Again, thank you very much to those of you who are sharing your notes. I hope you can imagine how you would use those notes to recreate the text. But again, it's a really great activity for more creative use of the language. We have a specific goal, which is to recreate this text. We looked at how the teacher would give clear instructions. The words and phrases that the students need are in the unit. We're really testing how students are using these in a freer speaking activity now. We allowed students time to practice by practicing in a pair. And then to correct the mistakes again, I would recommend having students look again at the original passage and thinking about what is different to their reconstruction of the text. So again, I really recommend Dictogloss. It's similar to dictation, but it encourages freer use of the language. And it can be really funny depending on the reading passage that you're using. Here we were looking at a problem that a teenager has with using technology too much. So again, it's useful for digital literacies. If you have a short reading passage with a funny story as well, that can be a great way to use Dictogloss. But let's move on now to another quick communication activity. On the vocabulary and listening page here, before students do their listening practice, they're going to learn some activities that people do when they're alone, when they want to be creative, and when they go out, and some adverbs of frequency: often, sometimes, never. So again, in a real class, students would simply check the box, write 1, 2, or 3 into the box for each activity, add up their score, and then share their score with the partner. We're then going to listen to an audio passage of somebody talking about the same topic. But if you want to get even more communication practice with your students, we can do a fun game. And in this case, I'm going to use adjectives of frequency, bingo. So here I've drawn a 3x3 bingo chart with a star in the middle. Students then complete the bingo card by writing adverbs of frequency into the boxes. They can choose which adverbs they would like to write. Again, you can prepare these bingo cards, print them, and hand them out to your students, or you could simply draw one on the board and have them copy it into their notebook. So how are we going to play bingo? Well, here are the instructions from the teacher. Find a partner and ask them a question with how often. If they answer with one of the words on your bingo card chart, you can cross it out. So let's do one as an example. Student A, please help me to demonstrate. How often do you play computer games? And she answers, never. She's a very serious student, so she never plays computer games. So thank you. I can now cross out this one. We then swap and the other students will take a turn asking a question, and we continue until you have made a line of 3. It could be vertically, diagonally, or horizontally. Okay. When you have made a line of 3, you have finished, and then please bring me your bingo card and sit down. Okay. So that's how to play bingo. In a real class, students are going to make a pair, take turns asking and answering questions, or you could do it as a mingling activity where all students stand up, ask one question to a partner, and then find another partner and continue. But let's practice this together as a group, just as we're all together, and you're all going to be my partner. Okay, so it's a little different to how it would work in a real class, but please type in some questions into the chat box with how often. I will give the answer, and if I answer with one of these words, we will cross them out. Let's continue until we make bingo. Okay, so please type a how often do you question into the chat box. How often do you eat green curry? How often do you eat pho? How often do you play soccer? Oh, great. How often do you go to the cinema? Thank you very much, Sophia. Since the pandemic, I never go to the cinema. So I can cross out never. Thank you very much, Sophia. How often do you have durians? Thank you very much, Dun. Actually, I never eat durians. So we get to make another one there. Teacher Lam, how often do you play sports? Again, I never play sports because I like jogging, but I don't do it competitively. I never race against other people, so it's not sports. And you can see we have made a line of 3 already. Let me change my color so I can highlight this. 1, 2, 3. Great, so that's bingo. Thank you very much for your questions. And I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to include everybody's questions there, but thank you very much for contributing your ideas. So you can see it can end quite quickly. If you'd like to make it more challenging, it could be a chart of 5 by 5 or 10 by 10, etc. But it's a fun way of extending on what's in the book and getting students to practice more communicatively. As you can see, for how often bingo, we've got a specific goal. It's to make bingo. We looked at how to give clear instructions, the words and phrases that the students need. Again, the sentence stems are in the textbook. So Friends Plus gives you some very useful structured support there. We allowed students time to prepare and practice by making their bingo cards and thinking of some questions they could ask. And again, if you notice your students making mistakes when they're talking in their pairs, we're not going to interrupt here. We're going to do some post-activity correction. Okay. So just because some of you typed some interesting questions here, I'll just answer them for the sake of interest. So, Teacher Lan, thank you. I never go swimming. I never liked swimming. I'm sorry. How often do you go to the gym? Teacher Din, I never go to the gym. Sorry, I'm answering never to everything here, but I just don't like the gym. Than, how often do you travel to Vietnam? Very rarely, but I would like to travel to Vietnam more. How often do you drink coffee? Every day. I need coffee in the afternoon to stay awake. How often do you read a book? Every day, thank you, Nguyen. Tran teacher, how often do you go swimming? Again, sorry, I don't like swimming, so I never go swimming. And Teacher Pham, how often do you watch TV? Again, every day. I like to watch the news on TV in the evenings. Okay, so thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for trying out the activity. Okay, let's move on to a speaking activity. Here in the speaking page, you can see that we have dialogues to introduce speaking skills and various activities throughout the page. You'll notice on the speaking pages, we have plenty of pictures to set the context, but they're also useful to do extra communication practice with your students. So let's look at an activity that uses these pictures. This is called See, Think and Wonder. What we do is we show up the students a picture. If you have a large screen in the classroom, you could simply blow this up and show the students this without letting them read any of the text. Next, students are going to make this chart in their notebooks. It's a chart with the first column says see, so it's things that you can see in the picture. The middle column says think, so what do you think is happening in the picture? And then the right-hand column says wonder. What do you wonder about the scene? So let's do one as an example. So I can see two students, I can see textbooks, I can see notebooks, I can see pens, so they are studying. But what do I think is happening? Well, if I look at their faces, their expressions, I think they are bored. I think they want to go outside or they do something else. So I wonder where they're going to go, what they're going to do. Okay. So there are my ideas. Okay, so I wrote them in a chart. Afterwards, we can have students make a pair and read their ideas together. And then maybe present their ideas to the class. After they have done this, they then do the dialogue activity. So before students read and listen to the dialogue, it's useful to do this because it sets the context. You'll notice in the dialogue, a lot of the things it's useful to understand the scene that the students are studying and what they want to do, etc., before we read the dialogue. So I really like See, Think, Wonder. It's a great way to practice describing what you can see, interpreting information and pictures, what you think is happening, and questioning scenes and pictures. What do you wonder is about the picture? Let's practice it together. I've got 3 more pictures from the textbook. Here's another one. Please type into the chat box, what do you see here? What do you think is happening? And what do you wonder? Again, please type your ideas into the chat box. I see... What do you think? How do you interpret the picture? What do you guess about these people, what they're doing, what they want to do, their feelings, etc.? And what do you really wonder? Okay, great. So thank you very much, teacher. You can see a dad and son sitting together. Great. Thank you very much. Dad and son sitting on the sofa. Okay, thank you very much for clarifying. Okay, they're watching TV. Great, very much. Thank you very much. You think that they're watching a football match. Okay, perhaps they are. They're exciting. Perhaps they look excited, don't they? And teacher, I see a boy. Very much. Perhaps the son. Maybe it's a girl and a boy. Okay, so we're not really sure. She does. They're watching TV. You think that they like the program? Okay. And Teacher Yen, I wonder what program that they're watching. Okay. Great. Thank you very much for your ideas there. How about this next picture? Again, please type into the chat box. What do you see, think, and wonder about this picture? Okay. Okay, so still a few ideas for the last picture coming. Perhaps they're watching a comedy. Great idea. Okay, so thank you very much. I see a girl shopping. Thank you, teacher. Great. And she bought a lot. Thank you very much. I think she is happy. Yes, you can see she has a big smile. I think so too. Okay, happy with her shopping. Yes, she's bought some great things. A sweet smile and a lot of bags. Thank you very much, teacher. Perhaps she brought things on a sale. Great idea. Thank you very much, teacher. Okay, bright blue box with message. I wonder how others will respond to these sentence starters. Great idea. Thank you very much. Okay, I wonder how old she is. Great idea if she's 20 years old. Okay. Okay, so I'm so sorry I don't have time to read out everybody's ideas, but I hope you can see there this is a great way to practice using simple language, which the students have already learnt, to describe things that they see, describe things that they're interpreting about the picture, thinking, and questioning, wondering what you see about the picture. And we can do the same with the other pictures. What you'll notice is that we're setting the scene, so it will be easier to complete the activity. Once students have brainstormed their ideas about the picture, then they'll be able to write dialogues using the pictures, which they need to do in the textbook. Okay, so that was See, Think, Wonder. Again, it's a great way to practice describing, interpreting, and questioning information from pictures. Again, there's a specific goal to complete the chart. We looked at how to give clear instructions, what students should do at each stage. The words and phrases the students need, we didn't really look at those. They're not really in the textbook, but you could write some simple phrases on the whiteboard to support this activity. We gave students some time to prepare and practice by completing their chart. And again, if you see bad grammar or mistakes in the charts or when students are reading, we can do post-correction activities for those. Okay, now let's finish up with some presentation practice. We don't actually have presentation pages in Friends Plus, but we do have writing activities which could also be used for presentation practice. So on this page, students are going to write a blog about themselves, the places they like to go, the things they like to do, sports and hobbies they like to play, the things they like to do on screen, and the music that they like to listen to. So here's the example from an example Vietnamese student. You'll notice she lives in District 5 in Ho Chi Minh City. I've been told that they're changing that system, so it won't be called District 5, District 4 anymore. It will have names for each ward in the city. So hopefully that will be updated soon. But you can see some of the example ideas and the phrases. So for example, I enjoy doing this, I usually do this, I'm not really bothered about this, I hate this, etc. So those phrases are in the textbook for the students to use. They're going to write up their ideas, but before they do that, let's look at how we might do a quick presentation activity to get students to present their ideas to a partner. Rather than writing out full sentences, we could have students prepare by completing this kind of chart. Again, we've got places, sports and hobbies, on screen and music, and the things that you really like, you're not bothered about or don't mind, and really don't like or hate. Okay, you can see the examples that I've written up here. We don't need one thing for absolutely everything, but just a few ideas so the students can structure their presentation are very useful. Okay, so this student really likes shopping malls and cafes, but she hates karaoke. She likes playing pickleball, which I understand is popular in Vietnam. She doesn't mind soccer, not bothered about soccer. On screen, she likes using Zalo, which I understand is a popular social networking site, but she really hates watching movies. For music, her favourite musician, you can see here, is Hugh Tu Hai, which I looked up. I understand he's very popular with Vietnamese teenagers, but she really doesn't like Billie Eilish. Okay, so let's look at how a student might give a presentation using that information. You're going to be teachers this time, so please listen to me as the student and think about what feedback you would give. What do I do well and what do I need to improve? Afterwards, I will ask you to type your ideas into the chat box. So here we go. Here's my presentation as the student. My name's Rob. I live in Chiba in Japan. This is what I like to do every day. Places. I love being at the mall with my friends. We often go to cafes after shopping. I'm not mad about karaoke. Sports. I enjoy pickleball. I play 3 times a week. I quite like soccer. Screens. I really like texting my friends on Zhao or Zalo. I'm not a big fan of movies. And music. My favourite singer is Hugh Tu Hai. I'm not mad about Billie Eilish though. These are the things that I like and I don't like. Thank you very much. Okay, how was my presentation? Oh, sorry. Before I give my presentation tips, what feedback would you give if I was your student? Please type your ideas into the chat box. What do you think was good about my presentation? What do you think could be improved? Okay, again, please type your ideas into the chat box. Okay, was that a fantastic presentation? Was it quite good? Was it not very good? Was it very bad? What would you say if I were your student? Okay, thank you very much, teacher. It is clear, thank you, but boring because you did not express emotion. That's a very good point, thank you. In a real class, perhaps we wouldn't say boring to the student, but we could encourage them to express their emotion more. Thank you very much for your idea. And your ideas are very good. You need to be more confident. Great, thank you very much for that feedback, teacher. So you can look at ways to express confidence. Slow, a little boring. Okay, thank you very much for your idea, teacher. Again, we might be a bit more gentle with the students in a real class to build their confidence. Teacher Lan, thank you very much. Eye contact to audience, and my voice was a little flat. Thank you very much. I was looking at my notes a little too much. Again, I wasn't reading a script, but I wanted to check my notes, so I should check and then look up again. I think is the main point. Okay. Speed and facial expression. Thank you very much, teacher. Do you think that I was too slow or too fast when I was speaking? Okay. And again, my facial expression, I imagine I should smile more, or was I smiling too much? And tell teacher, thank you very much. This is a nice try. You did include all the ideas. It would be better without so much ah. Okay, that's a good point. Many people say ah too much. Okay. Thank you very much, teacher. Eye contact to the audience. Okay, again, I think I was looking at my notes too much. And teacher, thank you very much. My intonation, maybe as another teacher said, my voice was too flat. So thank you all very much for your great ideas there. Here are some general points about presentation. Some students can talk too quickly, and another teacher mentions the teaching speed. So I think I needed to slow down. We need to be clear and concise. So that can include not being our intonation as well, and not saying too much as we're trying to think of what we want to say. Eye contact, as many of you mentioned, is very important, and having a clear structure. So I hope in my example presentation there was a structure there. We used the charts to help students organize their ideas, and that can help to include this in the presentation. But as many of you mentioned, intonation is also very important, tone is very important, facial expressions and gestures as well can really help as well. Thank you all so much for your ideas there. So as we're doing presentation practice in class, again, we can include all these ideas to support the students. The goal here is to give a good presentation. We didn't look too much here about giving clear instructions, but of course that's very important for the students. Perhaps if the teacher gives an example presentation as well, that will show the students good examples and maybe some bad examples too. The words and the phrases that the students need are again in the reading passage and on the page in the textbook that would support them. We allowed students time to prepare by filling out the chart and maybe practicing by giving their presentation to a partner first or a small group before giving their presentation to the whole class. And again, when students are giving a presentation, this is really a fluency activity. So of course we would not interrupt the students if they make a mistake. Native speakers often make mistakes when they're giving presentations too. I know that I do. And so of course we will do post activity correction with the students. So again, with those 5 tips there, I hope you can see how we can support our students and develop their confidence as they're doing all of these speaking activities. So those were the communication activities I introduced today. We did a class survey. We practiced 2 truths and a lie. We did Dictogloss, bingo, see, think and wonder, and a little presentation practice at the end. I'm just interested in getting some feedback from you before we finish up. Which of these do you already use in your classes? Are there any new activities that you would like to try? And do you have any other activities that you often use and you'd like to recommend to the group? So we'll just take a few minutes at the end here. Please take some time to type your answers into the chat box, and we can look at these together as a group. Which activities do you already use? Which would you like to try? And what other activities that I didn't mention would you like to use in your classes? Okay, so please excuse me just for a second as I take a sip of barley tea. Okay, so thank you very much, teacher. You have used bingo, great to use, and 2 truths and a lie, and class survey. Okay, so those are familiar activities for you. Oh, thank you very much, teacher. I'm glad to hear that it was useful. Thank you very much. Do teacher has used a presentation practice before and done a class survey. Great. Another teacher has used bingo, presentation practice in the classroom survey. Okay. So again, these are some quite common activities I can see. Bingo, see, think, wonder in the class survey. Great. So I'm assuming these are all things that you already use in your classes, but please let me know if these are things you would like to try, or activities, or any other activities that you'd like to recommend. So 2 truths and a lie, presentation practice, Dictogloss, and the class survey, presentation practice and the survey. Okay, great. And Do teacher, you'd like to try and use 2 truths and a lie. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you all very much for your feedback there. I can see class survey and bingo are also very popular answers here as well. Okay, so if these are activities that you already use in your classes, I hope it was interesting to see how I was adapting them to suit the First Friends Plus material. If you would like to try those out in your class, please do. I hope they'll be useful. And again, if there are any other activities you'd like to recommend to other teachers, feel free to type those into the chat box as I speak. But let's just finish up now by reviewing some of the points I covered at the beginning of today's workshop. So we saw these points from the Common European Frame of Reference. Students with good communication skills can ask and answer questions about personal details. So most of the activities we did today had some pair work parts in them, where teachers will practice asking and answering these questions. Discuss topics of personal interest relevant to everyday life. So again, we talked about the things that we like to do, often do and don't do, etc. Plenty of those kinds of topics. And give reasons and explanations for opinions. So particularly in the presentation practice at the end, students were giving their opinions about music, sports, things they do online, etc. So I hope you could see all of our activities today covered these important communication competencies from the Common European Frame of Reference. We also had activities for both spoken interaction and spoken production. We had the pair work activities, which helped students to practice listening to a partner and responding appropriately and using the language spontaneously, though we did have chances for students to prepare their activities. And we practiced social skills such as keeping the conversation going. However, for the presentation practice, students were practicing speaking to the audience for a period of time, perhaps just a presentation for 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning, but as students get better, they'll speak for longer. And developing a prepared speech, not always memorized. So for the presentation practice, I showed how students would make notes and then give their speech based on those notes. And we talked a bit there about tone of voice and intonation. That's very useful for projecting your voice. And we could also talk about using appropriate body language as students practice those presentations. So we had activities there for both spoken interaction and spoken production. So let's finish off by talking briefly about some useful resources where you can learn more about the ideas that I've talked about today. We talked about global skills at the beginning and focused on communication and collaboration. But if you'd like to learn more about the other global skills that I mentioned, including intercultural competence, digital literacies, etc., please do download our global skills position paper from the link and QR code which you can see on the screen here. This was written by experts on how to create empowered 21st century citizens in your classes. There are a lot of general ideas here which aren't necessarily designed for secondary classes, but you can adapt the ideas very easily. And you can click through on the pop-up that we see. Another useful paper is called Visible Thinking. And this is where I got the idea see, think, wonder. It's what we call a visible thinking routine because the teachers and the students know what thinking skills the students are practicing. They're practicing describing, interpreting, and questioning. There are many more visible thinking activities available on this paper, and there's also a link to the Harvard Graduate School, which has done a lot of research on visible thinking, and on their website you can find even more practical activities which you can take into your classes. Okay, so with all of those resources and activities, I hope you could see how we can navigate all of the challenges that we see in getting our teenagers to speak in English classes and develop confident communicators who will be able to use English for international communication and thrive in the 21st century. That's everything from me, but before we finish up, we've got just 10 minutes left for questions and answers. So I'll look at the QA tab and see if we've got anything in the priority.
Rob, if you can go to the Q&A and new, please.
New tab. Okay, thank you very much. So I can see we have a question from a teacher. What are some creative ways to use digital tools? It's, for example, social media, podcasts, video conferencing to create authentic language experiences in the classroom? Thank you very much for that question, teacher. I actually did a webinar about this last week in which I introduced several ways that we can use digital tools, including video conferencing, for that very purpose. So if you have registered and you can access the recording for that, I would encourage you to view the recording. Sophia, could you just confirm, will all of the teachers who are attending today also be able to access the recording for last week's webinar? Or is it only those who registered for last week?
Last week is for different target audience, but definitely we can share the recording to our partner, Phương Company, and then they will share back to our teachers today.
Okay, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. So just to review some of the points that I talked about in that webinar, we looked at sites such as Padlet.com, which is a great discussion board resource where you can create a page with a question, students, and give a link to your students. Students click on the link and they can click on the page and type in their answers to answer a question. So in my webinar, we looked at a page in which students were brainstorming ideas for an amusement park. What would you like to have in your amusement park? And they could click and type in their ideas. They can add GIFs, pictures, GIFs, which are short video images, and web links, etc., to kind of illustrate their answers. They can vote for their favorite answers from their classmates, and they can type in comments from their classmates as well. So that's a great way to do a discussion online. We also looked at some sites and apps for extra vocabulary games and quizzes. Those included wordwall.com, where you can create a lot of extra quizzes for your students. And we also looked at how to use videos for extra communication there as well. So when you use the videos in Friends Plus, always have some activities for pre-listening, for previewing and post-viewing, and encourage students to use the visual clues to build up their knowledge of the topic. So those are just a few ideas. I hope that's useful. But if you do have a chance to access that recording, then you can watch that to learn even more. Okay, do we have any other questions before we finish up? Just check if there's anything in the chat. Okay, I can't see any questions there. So if anybody else does have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat now. Okay, so Teacher Lan, thank you very much. Could you please explain the fundamental difference in your approach to teaching speaking to secondary school students compared to high school students? Okay, thank you very much, Teacher Lan. That's a great question. I actually did do a very similar webinar earlier this month that was aimed at high school students using some similar ideas. So we focused on exactly the same 5 ideas for supporting students when they're speaking. For example, giving clear instructions, setting clear goals, error correction, etc. So they're very important regardless of whether you're teaching secondary or high school students. I think we have to take our expectations down a little bit with the secondary school students. They can't use the language as creatively yet, and they can't speak for as long as high school students yet. So I think they need more structured support. We need to make sure we always have, for example, sentence stems in the textbook or on the whiteboard for the students to look at as they're speaking to their partner. We also need to grade our activities. So if there's presentation practice, it needs to be on an easier topic and maybe a little shorter. And if we look at things such as giving opinions and reasons, that might be more difficult for these secondary school students. So if they can just express their opinions for now, and maybe one or two supporting ideas, that's fine. Whereas with high school students, we'd want to expand on that and have students give maybe 2 or 3 examples to support each opinion. So I think with some careful structuring and adjusting our expectations to meet our students, then we can make sure that both secondary and high school students can both enjoy speaking in English. I hope you'd find that the activities that I introduced today were leveled for your students okay, but if you think they would be too challenging, I hope you could see some ways to level them down a little bit more for your students. If they were too easy, then perhaps you could make them a little more challenging for your students. Okay, but thank you again for the question there, teacher. Okay, let me just go back to the Q&A tab. I don't think we've got any new questions here. Okay, and I can't see any in the chat. So thank you all very much for your active participation today. It's been a real pleasure working with you all. And again, please do take these ideas into your classes. And I hope you will see your students enjoying speaking English together. Thank you once again for joining us, and see you again sometime soon. Back to you, Sophia.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you all teachers for joining us. Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. Teachers, we do hope that you will find some of the useful information that you can adapt into your classroom. There is a question in the Q&A, but I already respond to that. One teacher is asking about, do you have any kinds of recordings for Tiếng and Friends Plus Level 8? For this year, we don't have specific webinars for Tiếng and Friends Plus Level 8, but we do have the recordings for different levels of Tiếng and Friends Plus. After these webinars, I'm going to share with you a Facebook group, which you can access there, and on that Facebook group, I will reshare all of the resources from all 4 levels of Tiếng and Friends Plus so that you can rewatch it anytime. As you can see on the screen, today you are going to receive 2 emails. One for all residents. You are going to receive recordings for today's webinar, also a handout of this presentation in PDF. And for those who attended online, you are going to receive your e-certificate of attendance. So please watch your inbox. Here, I just mentioned about the Facebook group, the Oxford Teacher Zone in Vietnam. To join us, you just simply click into the offer that I'm bringing on the screen now. So that you can continue to connect with us after the webinar. On 27, before I forget, on the 27th of September, we are going to have a flagship event. We call that is an Asia Oxford Day online. To register, please click into the register link I put into the chat box, or you can click to the offer. I bring it here to you. So here, this is the online events that we invited a lot of EOT. Feel free to register and join us. And one last thing, your feedback is really valuable for us. So we encourage you to take some time to complete the survey feedback now. It will help us to improve our webinars resources that we can support your teaching. Thank you very much for joining today. As the school year really start in about 1 month, we wish you all the best with a lot of health and successful for the school year ahead. Thank you very much, and we look forward to welcoming you in the upcoming webinars from Oxford University Press. Thank you very much.